Just a quick introduction. I'm Stephanie Vandenberg. I'm Global Vice President of Sales for OpenSlate. OpenSlate focuses on making sure brands show up in quality content across video and video platforms, and something I think that's really important to you, Matthew. So I'll let you introduce yourself now.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. And hello, everybody. My name is Matthew Torello. I lead our global Amazon business for the Coca-Cola company, and really excited to be here. And while we are not, in France, at least I'm in Atlanta and I have somewhat nice weather, we'll be there in memory. So maybe next year, but thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's great. I'm really I'm excited about the conversation today. It's such a unique and fascinating, I guess we could call it somewhat of a marketing superpower execution here. But first, your title, Global VP Amazon at the Coca-Cola company. Yep. Can you kind of speak to that role and what that means?
Yeah, so my role is simple, quite frankly. We want to make sure that we partner with the customer, in this case, Amazon, and we deliver the right consumer experience agnostic of platform. So my responsibilities across retail and media, and we want to really break those barriers so we can go not only to the customer, but also to the consumer and deliver best-in-class activations and not be necessarily held to just a sales function or just a media function, but driving a total experience directly to the consumer agnostic of pillar. And I've had Amazon for most of my career in different roles in companies. I used to have, I guess, really nice hair at one point, so maybe that's the side effect of being an e-com. But what we wanted to do was really be able to leverage the power of both platforms and both systems to deliver the best experience and best engagement to the consumers, and not be subject to any type of a legacy approach where you only focus on one pillar, and at times you could potentially make subpar decisions and focus on the other. So we want to look holistically across the board, and that's what I get the privilege and pleasure to do today at the Coca-Cola company.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We're going to get into a little bit more deeper into the campaign. So congratulations on your nomination for a Cannes Lion Award in 2020 and a recognition again in 2021 as we kind of roll 2 years into one virtually here. Hope to see you on the Crescent next year in person. But again, congratulations on that nomination and recognition, and you're on the homepage of the Cannes Lion site. I think what we're going to talk about, I think, is an interesting comparison between what you hear a lot in our industry today around marketing is the attention economy. Yep. I think what you've done with this global campaign we're going to talk about is really get in more into the experiential economy, right? And how does that help you engage with the passions of your customers and consumers? So can you tell us about this amazing kind of global campaign you put together, collaboration, if you will, with Amazon and F1 McLaren?
Yeah. So I'll start by going backwards a little bit. So this was a great activation, and we're actually featured through Amazon Port on the Conline event. So we actually have a great interview. I look a lot better on that because it was doctored up with hair and makeup, or at least makeup for me. And we're hosting on the landing page to really go into the dialogue between the activation, what we came to, what was the journey, and then how did it resonate both with McLaren as well as the consumer base. And so that's kind of just a little bit of the tease of it. But the precursor of this was, this was a customer activation that was kind of built from the ground up. And the story of it is, back in 2019, I got promoted to lead this role. And I wanted to do a couple things right off the bat. One is deliver and create launch a global campaign. And then two is also build out capabilities that allow us to do something different. So in our journey at that point, we were very segmented. So we wanted to have something more holistic and allowed us to give us that full reach to go drive against something a lot more attainable from an innovation side. So this was an opportunity that was brought to me. And, I think as you and I had our prep call or a pre-call, you were asking me a lot of questions about racing. And my response was, I'm American, so I don't really know much about it. And I knew very little about Formula One in itself. And, when we saw it was, okay, this is a great opportunity to try something different. And as I shared, in a little bit of a plug is, I was heading out to London and I coincidentally downloaded the Netflix series. At that point was the first series of Driven to Survive on Formula One. And it was super fun. It was cool. But what resonated me was the fan base, the consumer engagement, the dedication and the passion of the fans. And we're able to say, yes, we have a lot of new markets opening up in Amazon globally at that time, especially in 2019. Fresh was starting to get expansion. So has like a great platform of consumer reach and engagement. This seems like a perfect idea and a perfect opportunity to partner with and really accelerate. At that time, Coke and McLaren already had a partnership that they tested. So my role coming into 2019 was actually taking over the partnership fully and building out this campaign from the ground up. And I will tell you, in full transparency, had very little idea what we were doing once we went started. But that's the strength of having great teams, both internally as well as externally with McLaren and with Amazon, to really build that collaboration and build it out together from a success perspective, which is what you see today.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this too in our prep session. Like there are sports enthusiasts or sports fans, and then there are car fans, but there's nothing like the culture of the car fan, right? And I know this because my son is very involved in cars and putting on car events actually through race service. But it is a passion, and it's a fabulous community of people that come together. So through what the campaign that you launched, and I want you to go into more about the filming and that such, you were actually able to tap into the attention economy, right? So getting the attention of your consumers, but bringing the experience to them at the same time through this global collaboration.
And I think, when you think about promotions, and I would tell you, like, even with us in the past, it was, okay, you're going to do promotion with Amazon, or many brands look at it this way. Here's a coupon, here's a search, here's maybe a little bit of display, and cool, I'll see you later, right? And then I'll complain if I'm out of stock or I get crapped out. But like it's always very singular. So what we wanted to do is really do something different where we can be able to build out capabilities truly for the future of this. And this was the precursor for that. And we had the idea, says, hey, we got a car partnership. How cool is it to do deliveries? Right. And what you see with the video, and hopefully we'll share it here in a minute, it's a great video that drives engagement, but it was only a piece of the total pie, right? As we looked at the bigger component of it, it really focused around, okay, now we have this full ecosystem of both lower and upper funnel activation to go support it, drive, and hopefully get positive reach, impressions, conversion, new to brand, components that allowed us to point back to the total platform to get those new consumers in the site. So the video was a starting point. I would say the meat of it was really kind of at and after, but we had the idea that said, well, I would say we had a few ideas from a legal perspective, insurance perspective, we couldn't achieve most of them. So we ended with this one, which I think was the best one, because you were able to see the two drivers to really, share and engage with each other. And for anybody who's ever watched Formula One and had any kind of layer of engagement, probably saw that these two drivers have great chemistry. So at the time, it was a great organic experience, and it wasn't a scripted ad where you were being sold something off of a script. But the meat here was the ad was the first part, the activation and the acceleration and engagement was the key winner here. And that was the second part. So here's the video. Let you guys play it to see it, and hopefully, it works.
Hey guys, Carlos and Lando Norris here in Austin, Texas. We're gonna make some Amazon deliveries today, and we'll be giving Coke Zero Sugar to our customers.
Mate, what do you think you're doing?
I'll wear it as long as you're driving. Your delivery, sir?
Your delivery with some Coke Zero Sugar. Get your favorite Coca-Cola products delivered by Amazon. F1 drivers not included.
That's great. I think that brings to life what we were talking about. Yeah. So how did this whole production take place? And tell us a little about the backstory on this.
Yeah. And I would say that video, that's the more of the truncated version of one. If you go on the site, you'll see the larger one as well. And I would tell you, it allowed us to partner with different platforms within Amazon, because I would say the precursor to this, like the guiding principle, is we want to create something global and we want to learn from it, but we want to test out the capabilities for the future, right? So this allowed us to get into different aspects, not in terms of delivery of media execution, what's better top funnel look like, but also within Amazon. So in this partnership, we were actually able to partner with Amazon Custom in this scenario and Amazon Advertising. And I'm not a videographer. I don't know any of that. I will tell you, when we showed up on set, because this was filmed in Austin right before the Austin race in 2019. And when we all arrived, the look of everybody's face, like everybody had the jaw drop. Like everybody was like, because you had production teams, trucks, cars on top of cars sitting all over the place. So this was
not just any car.
That's right.
What's the actual value of each of those cars?
North of 200 to 300 grand for those specific ones. Yep. So it was amazing. And it showed, again, the partnership of both sides, McLaren and their support, as well as Amazon and their production support to come in and produce a video. Like, I'll be honest, I was waiting for like The Rock or somebody to pop out of one of the scenes, because it was a legit shoot, and everybody got very nervous, like me included. And the drivers who are racing, 200 miles an hour in front of hundreds of thousands of fans globally, like, we're all nervous just with the sheer volume and size of it, but it shows how important that partnership and that collaboration is to build it. But I will tell you, when everybody arrived on set, everybody was nervous. Like, it's an overwhelming sight, but that's why the quality and the production look as good as it does, because it has to be done kind of to that extent versus, we were good on the path of, do we do personal cameras? Do we do GoPros? Like,
Right.
What does it look like? But it was a great experience, and the B-roll was even more epic than the first. So we were able to see it that way, and it goes back to the authenticity of it, right? It's the authenticity of the two. It's the authenticity of the quality, where it's not just some thrown together assets, because this asset lived for 2 years until the drivers rotated out last year, and we've launched it across different countries, Abu Dhabi being one of the most key ones that we had last year. So we wanted to make sure it was scalable while maintaining that authenticity and that legitimacy over it.
So you filmed in 2019.
Yep.
Obviously, and then you were at CES. You did some interesting things at CES as well.
Yeah. So I would say, if I go back, the concept here was, the two guiding principles is we wanted to do something global, but we wanted to build out the capabilities for the future. Mm-hmm. And in this scenario was, how do we do things differently? I mean, I'm incentivized for certain things, and yeah, we want to sell more product, but like, we want to look at the holistic platform and the holistic engagement to the consumer and do something that's very different. And I would say, before I answer your question, if I go back, you touched on the car enthusiasts, right? So in terms of new capabilities that we've built, so that was the premise here. We want to go launch something, and we want to build out new capabilities for the future. As we built this, we actually built out a custom program within our site, within Amazon, where we were actually giving away car parts and signed merchandise for free. And the queue of demand, the queue of engagement, especially from a social perspective, was unheard of. I mean, in Abu Dhabi, we actually gave away like the halo of the car part, like the top part of the car, to a fan. Like, lucky fan, you just click on a button and it's a surprise and delight. It's a several $1,000 car part, right? And that engagement was unheard of. Like, the amount of people queuing up and getting that type of demand and that engagement was amazing. And it all landed and it all lived on our custom site for both purchase and engagement. So that was the key concept. How do we build out capabilities for the future to do things differently, right? So while this lived on and it still lives today, we also took a lot of those learnings and we said, okay, what do we do differently for a separate project? So the one that you referenced from CES was tied to the launch of our Coke Energy that we launched. So, I have Amazon. If you think of Amazon, you typically don't think of, outside of the retail stores, a very physical event. So what we decided to do, again, with a great collaboration with Amazon, is we built a 20-foot by 30-foot physical wall that we dropped in the middle of CES that was tied to an Alexa. So it was an Alexa wall. You would go up and say, Alexa, order me a Coke with energy. And it would dispense very manually, but a lot of bells and whistles, a Coke with energy. And the premise here was awareness, engagement, and sample trial, right? So we had this massive event that was this giant pillar that everybody walked up to, went to the unit, started talking to it, building out our full utterance campaign day one, mind you. And it allowed us to sample more products and more engagement on that activation that we then scaled it, not just at CES. We actually shipped it to our HQ for an event. And then we moved it to Grand Central Station the day after, I should say, show up Monday, so the day after the big game. So again, thinking about the type of activation that you had, it was a tremendous sampling event, gave us tremendous insights, and it all pointed back to the platform that we had on Amazon as a custom page for pre-orders. It starts showing, okay, we're doing things differently. You need to think about it differently. Yes, we can build a coupon very easily. We could dump a bunch of search very easily. Like, the ecosystem's there for a reason. Like, how do we leverage it beyond the traditional way? And that's another great example. Obviously, no tie into racing, but the functionality of how do we build things for the future and think about it differently allowed us to use that as another great example.
And that's, I mean, again, the Alexa wall example is another way you executed on both that. It get the attention, right? Sure. Attention and brand recognition, and let the consumer actually experience the product in a more future looking manner. So how did you raise awareness of these types of events to the broader market?
Yeah, so a lot of it was tied into an overall marketing campaign, but it was also featured on, okay, how are we going to leverage it from a total search media perspective? So, you know, once we had it on the site, there was a lot of social engagement tied to it. And as you can imagine, somebody seeing a 30 by 20 foot physical wall in CES, you're going to get a lot of social halo effect from it already. But what we did is we had a full funnel campaign tied to it, right? So what I've seen in the past is people run into an activation, dip their toe in the water, and then pull it out and be like, oh, it didn't work. So like, we wanted to be very deliberative and specific on what we want to go do, have clarity and consistency around our objectives and KPIs, and then activate it the way it should be activated. And guess what? If it doesn't work, we'll learn. Hopefully we have more hits than misses. But it allowed us to iterate it. So from this specific example, you know, we had a full-on campaign, both from a social perspective as well as your traditional media perspective across Amazon's platform. I think we had some engagement on IMBD. So we looked at it, the broader activation that make it big, so we can tie it in, and as well as capture learnings across the system as well.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about kind of we talk about our industry partnerships. We use that term. I think almost we say it too often with not really thinking about what it means, right? Yeah. And so you have this partnership with Amazon on several different levels, but with what you were able to pull together in this unique collaboration with McLaren and Amazon, I think really broke down the walls and created the output of that, doing things differently, had a huge impact. And how do you see that moving forward? Is this something that you'll continue?
Yeah, I think if you kind of boil it down, and it sometimes gets lost, and I can say this, you know, being in this field or channel, if you will, for a very long time, is we sometimes think of like everybody's trying to make a plan, and we treat partners as partners, but we're also trying to like not get like gotchas with them and stuff. So like we approach it very simply. Hey, we want to be successful, and guess what? Success leads funding for more success, right? Like that's the model here. Like we all want to do well. Our objectives should be the same as yours, and they are, right? So it's joint objectives. And what we've had that was so powerful with Amazon, McLaren, and us for this customer activation was our objectives aligned, right? And we required and requested, put in and push from all sides, right? So we all want to win together because it proves out the model, it proves out the success that can hopefully translate and accelerate greater ones for the future. Like nobody wants to go all in on something, get burned. And as I kind of say, like, yeah, you might muster through it for year one, but where it's going to hit you, and you probably know this more than anything with your brand partners, is it's not this year, it's the next year whenever you look to comp it, right? So like the model is your success is our success and vice versa. So we build out that model correctly. And I would say having that trust across the sides and I would say internally as well, like your internal stakeholders, allows you to be successful because you're not doing anything that crazy. You want to make sure the alignments are there so you can build that model and replicate it where possible, but also learn from it as well as you go from a forward perspective. So as we look at how do we engage the consumer, how do we drive capabilities for the future and leverage it? So that model is always going to exist. It's how do you find the right partners and the right platform for it is going to be the test. But I think we've proven that out and we're scaling it as we speak from a McLaren Amazon side. And you've hopefully seen some other examples as well. But the scenario is not that difficult. People tend to make it a lot more complicated. Like we all have the same objectives. We all want to drive and do really cool stuff and learn from it. Like you should be linked and kind of break down those barriers of everybody trying to play the guessing game and just go after it very directly and see the results that matter.
Yeah, you use the word drive, no pun intended, right?
Yeah.
So, and you had you have such great brands to work with, right? The Amazon brand, the Coca-Cola brand, and the McLaren brand, right? To be able to combine those three strong brands to really execute something first class. And I listened to one of your interviews of the overall experience as well, and the term superpower of the brand. And I think that each brand brought their superpower to really pull off this amazing collaboration.
Yeah, we have a great problem, which is we got three iconic brands with three great collaborative teams. And look, we want to do something. We want to do something cool. We want to learn from it, get great results, and iterate it for the future. So, from a fan perspective and a consumer expensive, it's a home run, right? So we want to make it fun and engaging and drive that awareness, but also drive the learnings that help support the KPIs and results for us so we can make it sustainable and replicatable for the future.
So for the other brand marketers who may be listening into this discussion, are there three things or anything that you wish you would have done differently if you had a chance?
I would say, so I lead Amazon in e-commerce, and I would say this was in 2019 prior to COVID, which is now everybody's really going, head in the water over it. I would say you want to take a step back and understand what's the role of the brand and what's the role of the activation, right? And what you're seeing kind of across the industry right now is like there's a heightened acceleration. I mean, Prime Day is today, right? So you got a lot of attention, a lot of excitement. You want to make sure you're building out capabilities that have sustainability across it in terms of stretch, in terms of leverage, and also in terms of learning. So, we've looked at it from a 2019 perspective pretty quickly, right? We've owned the business and we're running it. I would say if it were to happen this year, there'd probably be a little bit more dialogue in terms of getting really focused, not on your KPIs for you, but for the organization as well, for all of the leadership that says, look, here's what this matters. Here's the so what, right? Promotions dry up after a while. Just throw in ads and coupons and activations, like that has a length, right? And maybe it's a very long, platform and maybe very long sustainability aspect, but like you could have an expiration date on there. So the biggest piece I would say is, think about what's the so what, right? Like, how do you want to leverage this? How do you want to unlock it? What's the role of the brand? What's the role of the partnership? Is it learnings? Is it capabilities? Are you looking to drive a number to hit a quarter? So like you really start digging it down that side. And I think that pillar, those pillars of questions are going to be so much more important right now than it was back in the day when we had it. But it's going to be so critical right now because you kind of have everybody just diving in because they kind of need to. So you want to make sure it's tight, and you want to make sure you're not burning yourself on the back end, but also saying like, look, you have very tactical activations. Those run all day long. That's your always on campaign. How do you take some shots for the future to learn from and to build from and see what happens, right? If they miss, they miss. And hopefully you're still here. But like the goal is have more hits than misses, but misses are okay every once in a while.
Because you learn from them.
Exactly. Yeah, you build out the next steps for it. You now know what not to do and how to change it for the future. And having an organization, which I'm very fortunate that gives me the autonomy and the coverage to do that is key because it allows us to build out our future together. And you want to do, things that are great for the brand, things that are great for the consumers, and things that are great for the customer as well.
Yeah, it's you touched on objectives and having shared objectives. Was that something that was easy for Coke and Amazon and McLaren to align on? Was that or did you kind of have a working discussion around that?
When we started the partnership, it was all based on trust and it was based on where do we want to go. And what's interesting about this is, we're the customer as well as, and they're the customer. So it's kind of this weird dynamic where we look at it and say, like, we're both kind of the customer in this scenario. And look, we all want to be successful and we all want to win. And we looked at it and said, okay, when we launched it, it was 2019. But what does the roadmap for 2020 and beyond look like? So once you have that framework and you're looking at it and saying, look, this is more than hopefully just a shot in the dark, a test and learn, a pilot, right? I think everybody likes to use the pilot phrase pretty pretty regularly. It's more than just a pilot, maybe not shared, but internally, it's more than a pilot.
Mhm.
So how do we look at it together? And once you have that collaboration together, that's where you see the magic happen, right? Not only do you see access, and not only do you see pieces lean in, but it goes back to my further comment that it's not rocket science, right? You want to go be successful. So, hey, here's what I need to deliver. What do you need to deliver? Here's how we do it together. The whole premise of this is to make sure that all sides are successful so we can replicate it, have a positive ROI or accretive KPIs, and do more of it going forward, or not, and learn, but not cut your losses pretty quickly. So in that sense, I mean, it's been easy. Now, maybe we're very fortunate to have two fantastic partners, one in McLaren and one in Amazon. So maybe I'm oversimplifying just based on that, but it should be kind of boiled down to the simplistic terms of saying your objectives are my objectives. So our objectives, regardless where we sit or who's collecting what check. So we should build this together, and that's the only way it can be successful. And I would say this is year 3 of the partnership. I think that model is working pretty consistently now.
I like that, especially now. I mean, just that whole kind of philosophy and authenticity that you're talking about, right? And just kind of removing the egos.
That's right.
And creating your own community of collaboration through the partnership. And
right.
You started this in 2019. You had no idea, none of us did, quite frankly, but any idea what we're going to go through. Yeah. And then you had 2020. And did you do any filming in 2020, or did everything go on hold?
So we activated because the filming was still relevant from 2019. But we did activate in 2020. So we had a mega campaign in Abu Dhabi, which was the end of the season. So we're still activating across it. Just the filming of it wasn't needed. But I'll go back and I'll give you maybe a fun story. It's a little embarrassing story, but I'll give you a fun story over it on the strength of the partnership. I would say you also want to know your limitations, right? So when we took over the asset, we were trying to figure out what we're going to go do. And I remember in my office, and I had my associates with me, Caroline Osborne and Vu Huang, if you're listening. I started drawing stick figures on my board on like the storyboard, because I was required or requested to make a storyboard. Didn't know what that was.
I was going to ask you if you had a creative background and you knew what that was. Yeah.
No, I mean, I have ideas and that's about it. So I created a storyboard of stick figures and I think cars that look like buses on like, here's what we want to go do with it. And I mean, it was pretty embarrassing. And I think that I'm fearful that that document still is floating around because I was drawing stick figures of the drivers. I'm trying to see like who's who and they do this. And it started with like a traditional storyboard and then it just morphed into like 600 different arrows of stuff and my scribbling. But we took it to Amazon. Hey, this is what we want to go do. Here's what I want to go do. Here's what we envision of success. Here's the roadmap of it. And they translated it into what you see today. And McLaren also supported it as well. They backed in and said, well, what about this? So it was that joint collaboration. But the embarrassing piece is that document probably terrifies me at night that it's going to get out somewhere. Hopefully it doesn't, because it's pretty embarrassing. It's pretty horrific. The drivers are fun and they're cool and I don't want to offend them also. But it shows like, you know, your limitations, and that's why you have great partners where they're able to come together and say, here's what that total activation looks like together versus, you know, really a singular component. If this was only me saying, do this, do this, do this, we probably won't have, or we definitely won't have the results that we have today from that. So.
Well, you mentioned the drivers. How was it working with Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris?
It was great. I mean, they got really behind it. I mean, they really did. I mean, they're two great superstars, right? And especially from a Lando perspective, that was his rookie season, right? So McLaren leaned in aggressively, right? Because it's great for both brands and it highlights the partnership and it's really fun to do. I mean, you've not really seen a lot of that throughout the industry just yet. So, I mean, for them, I mean, it was great and very accompanying. Everybody was nervous the first day of the set, like everybody, except for the director, but everybody else was really nervous.
Oh, that's a good sign. You don't want your director to be nervous.
Yeah, everybody else was. I mean, they were great. Like everybody got behind it and they're great brand ambassadors. They're fans of the brand from a personal side. So, you know, it was great on that side. It wasn't this stuffy, you have 32 minutes and counting type of approach. I mean, it was everybody leaned in because they believed in the story and they believed in the activation and they all had passion regarding the execution of it.
So you didn't know a lot about F1 when you first started coming up with this concept. You've been involved with it now for 3 years.
Yep.
So would you say you're a car enthusiast, F1 fan today?
Yeah. I mean, I'm an F1 fan. I do follow the sport now. I drive a Lexus, so I don't know how much of a car enthusiast I am. You know, I don't know if I have that car just yet. But I enjoy them. It's a great experience. And if you've ever been to a race, to see the consumer engagement, like the fan engagement, it's some of the best I've seen in my career. But I'll follow the sport, and I'll occasionally rev my car every once in a while, but it's a great sport to follow for sure.
Yeah. So did you have a chance to drive a McLaren?
I did. I did in Austin. I would say, you know,
On 6th Street?
yeah. The thing that's interesting is this was during race week. So you're in this great car going 0 to 10 miles an hour, and that's about it because you're in bumper to bumper. And it was really distracting driving, not necessarily being in the car, but everybody taking photos, like every guy coming up taking a photo of it and stuff. So it was a great experience. I was terrified. Again, not like you go 0 to 10 and that's it. And it was intimidating. But it was, yeah, a moment of my life for sure.
So will this series continue? Are you going to give us any kind of a sneak peek into what we should see in the future here beyond 2021?
So we're actually building out a bunch of campaigns right now for the back half of the year. So right now you've not seen much activation yet. So we have a heavy back half calendar featured from a global perspective across multiple markets on the back half that you'll hopefully be seeing some great activation between Coke, McLaren, and Amazon in the back half of this year.
And all associated with the F1 races, which is multiple cities around the world, right?
Right.
And I don't know how many cities are left. I think it launched in Dubai. Is that correct? Is it the first race of the year?
The Dubai is the last race of the year.
Okay.
So we have Australia, US, Dubai, a lot of the Middle East. So we have a good chunk of races that we're still planning out. But I would say there's going to be some pretty cool activation towards the end of the year that we're looking at as we speak.
And now that the world's opening up again, do you see yourself traveling to any of those events and those races in person?
It was on my, I would say there was 2 pieces on my bucket list last year, the Cannes event and then to Dubai. So I'm 0 for 1 at least already this year. No, I think we'll see travel. I don't know how much from a global perspective because some of the races are still limitations in fans, but I think you're starting to see that it open up, and if not 2021, I think 2022, barring nothing else happens, pretty consistent on that side.
Yeah, I've often said when we come out of this and our better norm, not just the norm, but a better norm of where we were, it's going to somewhat be like the Roaring 20s.
Yeah.
And we are in the 20s. So I think people are anxious, are excited to get back out there and get back to what I think we love a lot about our work and marketing and advertising and creativity is the relationships and the people.
That's right.
We built this relationship.
I mean, you get to feed off each other, and even, I mean, the Zooms are great, and I think that's here to stay. And to be honest with you, as a personal perspective, I think it's much needed. But there's also a component of the human component of it right now. Like, how do you feed off each other? How do you inspire, get that engagement that you can't get over the screen? So I think if anything, we're in a much better balance. Me personally, I think you should be, 9 to 5 in the office. No, and I've been fortunate where I've never kind of been that in my role. But I think it forces some of that legacy approach to be kind of normalized a little bit on saying, hey, we're not in the 20s, right? So like we punch in and punch out for most roles. So let's work the way we see fit, get things done. And I think having a human kind of, component where you're with somebody, I think has a lot of power with it, in addition to not having to drive an hour each way and then being able to get a lot done over the Zoom.
Yeah, to your point, I know you're a new father. You've got a 3-week-old, I think, and a 2-year-old.
2-year-old, yeah.
Yeah, so you look fabulous. You're incredibly well rested. So I don't know what you were talking about earlier.
Well, see, the trick was I've hired the hair and makeup to be full time here.
That's perfect.
Because I need makeup.
That's what you need. I think we're coming to an end. We're happy to answer questions from the audience. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the Q&A chat. I'll pose those up to Matt. And then while we're waiting for that, we'll just I watched a previous discussion between Calvin Klein and Facebook, and a gentleman from Facebook had this fun little question game. So
I like that. I saw that.
yeah, it was well done. So I was just thinking, I'll ask you a couple questions around a Cannes theme.
Yeah.
Would it be Sancerre or Rosé?
Rosé.
Rosé. Would it be a beach party or a yacht party?
Ooh, a yacht.
A yacht party would be good. Would it be driving race cars around Cannes or doing one of those 30 to 50 mile bike rides they do?
Oh, I do the bike ride because if I at least crash, hopefully it's not an expensive crash, and I'm not in.
Good point.
So, because I'm also anticipating I had a couple glasses of rosé in me as well.
Right.
So, for safety reasons.
Yeah.
The bike ride.
Yeah. Well, Matt, thanks for the conversation. Congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
And kind of redefining what a partnership means, and collaboration, leveraging the superpowers of each brand, and really having true collaboration around that. So thanks again. I really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks Brand Innovators for pulling this great event together so we can all still be connected, and looking forward to seeing everyone in the Corset in 2022.
Awesome. Cheers, everyone.
Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matt. Hold on, before you go, I just wanted to say, what you said something that was really cool, which is like promotions can get lost when you're a big company, right? This is just a cycle. I mean, we do stuff, we're a big brand, people expect really cool things from us, but it's difficult to kind of weave a common story across them, and they kind of get lost in that. So I totally appreciate the point. And I just love how you said it, which is like everything is evaluated on its own merit, but also how it connects to the larger goals of the organization, which is awesome. And one last thing I'd like to say, maybe when you have time and maybe when we meet next in person, but like you must have some crazy negotiation skills, because for you to bring Coca-Cola, Amazon, and McLaren to the table and get them to agree on a common set of goals when I can't even get my kids to agree on pizza toppings. I mean, that's a special skill set right there. So kudos to you and your team for doing that. Hope to see you both in person very soon. And thanks so much for a great conversation, and great job moderating, Stephanie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Awesome.
Bye, Matt.
One. Cheers.
Bye, guys.